to do is show you a couple of things about using modules and then also about using some of the things that go inside of modules. And so we're going to look specifically at modules and pages. And so what I have here is a completely empty course shell. I just started this one. So there's literally nothing in it yet. And for review purposes, because if you don't do something often and repeated, then it has a tendency to kind of go away. It's in that short-term memory and doesn't ever get to long-term memory. So I just want to remind you that when you first get a new course shell, you can add a module by clicking on this blue button here. And we're just going to title this one Orientation, since that's one of the ones that we're using. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another module that we'll call unit number 1, since we're using that as well. And we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so we have these two modules here, and they're totally empty. There's nothing in them. So what we want you to know about modules is that they're like empty buckets in Canvas. And so people ask us, well, is a module equivalent to a unit? It can be. Is a module equivalent to a week? It can be. A module is what you make it. So if you would like it to be one module for every week of your course, you can certainly do that. In my course, I have 5 units, and so I end up with 7 modules in my course. I have an introductory module, I have the 5 unit modules, and then I have a midterm. And so each one of those is a separate module. And then my unit modules are 3 weeks long a piece. And so I have to really structure that module to let students know exactly what they should be doing each week as they move through the module. So the interesting thing about Canvas modules then is that if you think of Canvas, your course like a book, the modules are kind of like chapters in a book. And when we go to module view, which we can do as soon as we publish these two, then what you'll see is essentially a table of contents for your course. So students can use the module view if it's activated to see what the content is for your course at any given time. And then also, like a table of contents, they can say, oh, I want to go to this page. And since it's web-based, it's interactive, and they just click on the page and then they go to that. Okay, so modules are empty buckets that we put things in. And so let's put a couple of things in a module, and then we'll talk about the power of using the module. So if I want to add something to a module, what I'm going to do is come over here to this plus sign. And so above the modules, the blue button is to add a new module, but to add something to this module, the plus sign is right in the same square, in the same box as that module. So if I want to add something to orientation, it's this plus sign. If I want to add something to unit 1, it's this plus sign. When I click on that plus sign, it's going to say, well, what do you want to add to your module? And I can either add something that I've already created, or I can create something new. Here are my choices. I can add an assignment, I can add a quiz, I can add a file, like if you have a syllabus or something like that. I want you to put that one off to the side. It's not one that we recommend, and I'll tell you why in just a second. You can add a content page, you can add a discussion, you can add a text header. So this is a header that helps you divide that module. So for instance, in my 3-week module, I can say week number 1, and there's that header that's in place there, and then I can add all of the items. Week number 2, and then I could add items. Week number 3, and then I could add items. And then you can also add an external URL. So this might be a URL to Wikipedia or to your campus library or something like that. Or you can add an external tool. So external tools are applications that you can use alongside of Canvas. For instance, all of our soft chalk lessons are external tools, but in this case, we actually have them set up as assignments, not using the external tool. So the ones that I really want you to focus on for OESP are assignments, quizzes, content pages, discussions, and text headers. So in this case, let's go ahead and add a content page, since that's what we're working on last week, is creating content pages. And here it's going to say, do you want a new page, or do you already have a page that you've made that you'd like to add to the module? And in this case, I don't have any pages made, so I'm clicking on New Page, and it lets me name the page. And I'm going to name this page About Our Course, since that's what we did as well. And when I do that, it adds it to the module here. So if I've planned out my unit and I know that I want to have a couple of pages about policies, and I want to have a page about contacting me, and I want to have a page about netiquette, and I also want a discussion, and I'd like a syllabus quiz, I can just go ahead and add all of those kind of empty containers right now to that orientation module. So let's go ahead and add, I want to add a syllabus quiz. I haven't made one yet, so I'm just going to call it a new quiz, and I'm going to call it the syllabus quiz. And then I'm going to add a couple more content pages. I'm going to add one called policies. Now, actually, in my own course, I divide my policies up into separate pages so that the pages are relatively short, and students can find information easier by looking at that table of contents, the module's homepage. But for right now, let's just do one page with policies in it. I want a page on contacting me. And I would like a discussion, a meet and greet discussion. Okay, so far this is what I've added to my orientation unit. And this is the order that they're in. Now, do I really want them to take the syllabus quiz before they've actually read the policies or about contacting me? Probably not. So look what I can do in the module. I can come over here to these dots right here, and then I get a little crossbar. And if I click on that, I can drag the syllabus quiz down to below everything else so that they actually read through the module before they have to do that quiz. So each one of these things is empty right now. And you might be wondering, well, how do I edit it then? So at this point, if you just click on the title, then you get your blank About Our Course page. You can click on Edit, and when you select Edit, you can go ahead and type in your information. So I want to remind you a few things about building a content page, which is that you should be using the Rich Content Editor in order to do that. So I've just typed in some placeholders here, heading level 2, heading level 3. And what I wanted to remind you is that the title of the page, in this case About Our Course, is by default heading level 1. So there's only one heading level 1 per page or per item. And then the next heading level that you're going to be using is heading level 2. And so I've typed header level 2 here, and what some people are doing is actually going into the font size and making the font size bigger and adding bold or adding underlined. And this does not make a true header. So when your students are using a screen reader, if they're visually impaired or need some type of help from an assistive technology, then the assistive technology won't know that this is a header, because it's the HTML code behind the page is not coded correctly. So instead, what we would like you to do is use the paragraph styles to actually make this a header. So I'm going to choose header level 2 there. Again, an equivalent paragraph is going to go here. It's also header level 2. But then say you have a couple of pieces of information that are part of or a subset of this header, then you would make them header level 3. And the general rule is that you don't have a single heading at any level, right? That those headers are actually helping you group more than one chunk of information. If there's only one chunk of information, you can go with header level 1 and just give the information. But these headings actually divide things up into subsets. And in order to have subsets, you need to have more than one subset. Okay, so what you would do then is just type in your information. And when you hit save, this is a fully accessible page now. And so these would be like full paragraphs full of information, but these headers actually help people who are using screen readers. Let me show you what this looks like kind of behind the scenes. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this one a paragraph again. And instead, I'm going to make it maybe 18-point font. Well, let's make it see if we can make it about the same size. And I'm going to underline it, and I'm going to make it bold, which is what some people are doing in order to create headers. If I go into the HTML editor, it's actually going to show me the HTML code. And what you'll see is here, this is a header. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you in case you're on a smaller screen. What you see here is this HTML code that's marking this as a header. It's H2, which marks it as a header. The second one, however, has all of this information that is replacing the H2. So we've got a font size, we've got strong, we've got a text decoration called underlining. And the interesting thing is that the screen reader is going to read this out to students, which is a lot of information. They have to remember how you're formatting individual sections. But it won't read it out to them if they tell their screen reader, can you please read me the headings on this page? So essentially, if you think about it, as a student, if I'm reading this information, I can use the headers to quickly scan the page. So if I am cited, then I can go through and say, okay, this is about header 2, header 2, header 3, and header 3. But if I'm visually impaired, and I ask my screen reader to do that scan for me, if you've used just formatting to create this header level, the screen reader won't see it as a header, and so it will skip that information, and it will literally tell your student there are no headings on this page. So you've taken a student who's already visually impaired, and you've removed from them the ability to scan a page to see what the topics are on a page. So in order to enable the ability for that screen reader to scan, you have to tag that header using this paragraph style right here, okay? So that's why we want you to use headers. The other thing that is really important to remember is that some people say, well, I don't like what that heading style looks like. These have actually been designed by expert web designers to make your page as readable as possible to as many students as possible. A lot of people like underlining, but underlining is actually the web design that's used to indicate a hyperlink. So if you underline text, students are going to expect that it's a hyperlink. And if it's not a hyperlink, they're going to keep clicking on it and wondering why your hyperlink is broken. So you don't want to underline text as a way of making the text stand out. It doesn't work. In addition, if you've made the font larger or smaller than the default in Canvas, so this header level right here is already programmed into Canvas. When you select header level 2, it makes it a certain size and a certain font density. When you go ahead and make that font larger by using the font size right here, what's going to happen is when it goes to a mobile device, the headings that are pre-programmed in Canvas are going to scale to that mobile device. On the other hand, the heading that you made a specific font size is not going to scale. So you're going to have a very odd-looking page because of the way that it actually, the way you've coded the page. Okay, so we ask you to please just ignore this font size. You don't need to use it for anything. The other thing people say is, well, my goodness, The type is so small though, I can't see it. I need to make it larger so I can see it. If you're using a digital platform, then the way that you make it larger is each individual user has control of their own computer. So you can see I used Command or Control and the plus sign to make this larger for you so that you could see it over the video conferencing. And I can make it smaller just by hitting the minus sign. So as a user, I control the size of the font. So when you're designing pages, you use the default all the time, and the user can then determine whether they want the font larger or smaller. So you no longer have to do that. That's the beauty of a digital delivery system. Okay, so let's look at this header 2 again and think about how we're going to fix it now, because we've got all this code behind there. If you have a piece of text that you've brought in from a Word document or another source or maybe even another web platform, then what you can do to remove all that code is use this T with the X right here, and that clears the formatting. So when I do that, it goes back to the normal default paragraph text, and then I can come in here and actually code it correctly with the heading level, and it's accessible once more, and it also gets rid of all of that background coding, so there's nothing that interferes with the screen reader. You have a nice, clean, well-designed web page that uses HTML correctly. So those are a couple of tricks about pages and using pages correctly to have an accessible page for your student. I'm going to save it and publish it so that we'll be able to see it. Okay, so there's a few things about pages. Let's go back to those modules though. So here's our module. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and publish everything in here and pretend that we've written our discussion, we've developed our quiz, we have content in these pages. And so some people are afraid that when we do that, what's going to happen is our student is going to skip the content and they're going to go straight to the syllabus quiz. Just do the syllabus quiz because it's the only thing with points. So what you can do is click the edit button or select the edit button over here in modules. And when you do that, it will let you do something called add a requirement. When you add a requirement, you can select whether students have to move through your module in sequential order. So do they have to start from the very first thing you have in the module and work their way through, or can they choose how they go through the module? In this case, I'm going to let them choose how they move through it, but I'm going to set some requirements. And I'm going to say that students must complete all of these requirements. So the About the Course page, they need to view it. I'm going to add another requirement. The Policies page, they need to view it. Add another requirement. The Contacting Me page, I want them to view it. And the discussion, I would like them to contribute to the discussion. And then for the quiz, I think that they should score at least 8 points out of 10, okay? And so I can update my module, and when I do that, it adds this requirement onto the module. So when students see this, they know they have to complete all of the items that are in the module, plus I go over here to Settings, and then I use the Student view. I can see how the student sees my course. This is a really great thing to be able to do. And you'll see that there's this little notation for them that says they have to complete all of the items. And there's empty circles over here. If I go to About the Course and click to the next page, and then I say, oh, I'm out of time for today. I need to go take care of my children, or I need to go to work, or I need to go to another class. Next time I come back to the class, if I select the modules page, I have little green checks that tell me I've already completed these, so I know I can start right here at the Contacting Me page. Select that, move on to the discussion, take a look at the quiz. I go back to the modules page, and there's no check here because I didn't do the requirement, which was to contribute to it. And I didn't score at least 8 on the quiz. So these don't have a check mark, but these other pieces that just needed to be viewed do have a check mark. So that's a few things about modules and pages. The interesting thing about modules is however you put the information in the module, the students are going to move through it chronologically. And so you have to think about, what do I want my students to do first? What do I want them to do next? My orientation module is really long. It's 20 some pages. And so the first time I taught the course, I had all of this information, and at the very end of it, I had the meet and greet discussion and the syllabus quiz. And the meet and greet discussion, the first post needed to be done by Wednesday. And I had a lot of students who missed that first date. And when I asked them for some feedback, they said there was too much to read before I got to the meet and greet, and so I didn't finish it. I didn't finish reading everything until Thursday, so I was late on my first post. So I thought, well, wait a second. I want them to start engaging with the course and meeting their peers right away. So why don't I just move this meet and greet all the way up to the very beginning of the module? So let me leave student view. So essentially what I did in my very long module is take this meet and greet and moved it up to like the third item. So we have about this course, navigating the course, and then here, meet me, and then let me meet you. And so students start interacting in the course very, very early in the course, on day one usually, which is really good for me because it lets me gauge which students need some help before they can move on to the next part of the course. Okay, so that's what we have to show you with... Can
I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Now's the time.
Okay, so what if a student tried to click on the syllabus quiz right away? What would happen?
So it depends on how you set your requirements. So if you set your requirements so that they had to do them in order, so students must move through the requirements in sequential order, they would get a little message that says you cannot view the syllabus quiz until you've done these other things first, and it gives them a list of them in order. Okay. And
okay, so they'll still see that there's a quiz there. They
yep.
just can't access it yet.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And it will tell them exactly what they need to do. It gives a little list and says, before you can do the quiz, you must do this, this, and this. So I actually make my students move through my first unit sequentially. The other units, they can choose, but that first unit, I want to make sure that they're doing it in order, and so that they're actually getting the information about how we interact in the discussion before doing the discussion, and that they get the information about policies before they try to take the syllabus quiz. So I move them sequentially through it. The other important thing about that is that you don't have to have everything in here. So say that it's really important to you that your students know your communication policy and your rules for using the discussion forum and your grading policy, but the rest of the things like student resources or links to technology support, things like that, are optional, that they only need to use them when they need them, then you can make some things a requirement and leave other things out. So I could leave out my course policies, for instance, and just say you have to read about this course and how to contact me.
Got it. Now, is there any way to sprinkle quiz questions throughout? Because we do that for our lessons, but we're using a different quizzing software, right?
Yes.
There's no way to do that in Canvas, where they can read a bunch of text, then answer a question, and then maybe read some more text and then answer a question?
So the only way to do that is to do separate quizzes, which, you know, if you, it adds more columns to your grade book. So it can make your grade book very long, but it's a really good way to engage students. So one of the things that you want to be thinking about is, for every piece of content that you have, you want some way to be able to assess if students are interested in that content, whether they're using the content, whether they understand the content. So it's nice to have some type of activity or assignment or assessment that goes along with each piece of content. So when I design my syllabus quiz, I make sure that I draw from all of the content in my orientation unit. And that's one way that I engage them in all of the content of that unit. But you could also do it by having a series of shorter quizzes. Now, for a 1-week unit, it's not that important, but boy, in a 3-week unit like mine, having quizzes laced throughout is really, really helpful. So I actually have several text assignments where they read through part of the module and then they do a short reflection on it using the assignment tool.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What about, and I'm guessing this might be HTML coding, but is there a way where students can, like, it's not going into the grade book, it's not being recorded, but they can, like, there's a question and then they just click on it and then it reveals the answer?
Yeah.
You just have to be able to code that? Is that how that works?
No. Okay, so let's add a quiz. We'll make it a new quiz that would be like self-assessment. Right, so it's kind of like a self-check. You just want them to be able to think through whether or not they've actually got it.
Right, but I don't want to add another column in my grade book. I just want it to be there for them. Oh, awesome.
I think that it adds a column to your grade book no matter what.
Okay, that's not a big deal. Okay.
But what you do is you say, this is a ungraded survey, or you can have it a graded quiz, and you can say, there should be an option that says don't put this in the grade book. So you can let them see the correct answer. So once they try it, you can let them see the correct answer. Maybe it's only in assignments that you can do that. That wouldn't make sense though, because quizzes are a great thing to have like a self-check. What is that called? Let me do a little research for you and find out what it's called.
Perfect.
Because there is an option to have students do kind of like a test quiz. So like a sample quiz. Minute, allow multiple attempts. Show one question at a time. Send it to everyone. Let me do a little research on that for you.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm forgetting what that's called. Sample quiz or something like that. All right, Aloha may know. All right. So any other questions that you have?
Well, just